By doing this activity, I get an opportunity to read a book. According to the MEd curriculum, we have a task to write a review about any book by educational thinkers. Here I choose Paulo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Paulo Freire was a Brazilian educator and philosopher who was a leading advocate of critical pedagogy. His influential work, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, is generally considered one of the foundational texts of the critical pedagogy movement and was the third most cited book in the social science as of 2016 according to the Google Scholar. Book review. Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Pedagogy of the Oppressed is a book written by Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, first written in Portuguese in 1968. It was first published in English in 1970 in a translation by Myra Ramos. The book is considered one of the foundational texts of critical pedagogy and proposes a pedagogy with a new relationship between teacher, student, and society. Dedicated to the oppressed and based on his own experience helping Brazilian adults to read and write. Fear includes a detailed Marxist class analysis in the exploration of the relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. In the book, Fair called the traditional pedagogy the banking model of knowledge because it treats the students as an empty vessels to be filled with knowledge like a piggy bank. He argues that pedagogy should instead treat the learner as a co creator of knowledge. As of 2000, the book had sold over 750,000 copies worldwide. Fair organizes pedagogy of the oppressed into four chapters and a preface. Fair confronts two important challenges to the struggle for liberation and a fear of freedom that inhibits the oppressed from acting liberation themselves and the problem of secularism, which undermines the possibility of genuine social transformation. He addresses this in turn notion that the idea and observations he offers in pedagogy of the oppressed derive from his years of experience educating the poor and the middle class in Latin America. Fierce notes that the oppressed are often considered that the consciousness raising through which the oppressed come to preserve their exploration well leads to destructive consciousness. This is unturned, he asserts, since by making possible for people to enter the historical process as responsible subject. Consciousness enroll them in the search for self-affirmation and thus avoid phantasm. The oppressed fear of freedom is in reality a defensive measure as attempt to achieve a security which the risk of liberty. Challenging the culture of domination means comforting the oppressed and establishing the trade social arrangement under which they live. This threats the society security of oppressed who prefer conformity to liberty. Genuine freedom, however, is possible only when men and women embrace the existing risk. Fear observed that some of the oppressed are unwilling to risk comforting the area. Fear described two opposing models of education. He criticized the traditional banking method in which students memorize content deposited in them by the teacher and contrasts each problem posing education, where teacher and students work together on an equal footing to investigate reality and acquire understanding. Fair methodologically analyzed both type of education. He demonstrated the hierarchical and dehumanizing character of banking education, which support oppression. Conventionally, in problem posing education, students and teacher dialogue with each other to stimulate consciousness raising and the fuller expression of their humanity. Fair accounts of the two education style draw upon the extensional and phenomenologically philosopher of Jean Paul Simon and Edmund. The concept of banking and problem posing education style are arguably by the most influential and well-known idea in pedagogy of the oppressed. In traditional education, the teacher-student relationship is strictly hierarchical. The teacher assumes a position of authority, possessing knowledge that he imparts of the student. The student is a passive and empty receptacle for the knowledge, partially receiving and memorizing it. Education has a narrative character with a narrating subject and listening objects who are filled by the content of the teacher's narration. Fair elaborates his concept of problem posing education. He outlines its theoretical framework and describes how it should be implemented among impoverished people. Fair guiding belief is that the oppressed must help education with their teachers. They must be their one example in the struggle for their redemption. To create a pedagogy with not symbol for the oppressed, dialogue between the teacher student and student teacher is absolutely crucial. Fair content that it is through dialogue that human name the world, and in that naming transform the world. To exist humanity is to name the world, to change each dialogue. It is the encounter between men and meditate by the world in order to name the world, and is thus the essential necessary. Dialogue fear is belief is essential to fulfill our vocation of become more fully human. Fear identifies six dialogues. Love for the world and for people is necessary. Love generate commitment to the oppressed in the case of their liberation and is a prerequisite for establishing a dialogue relationship with them. Humanity is also essential. Dialogue is incompletable with an at least attitude and defensiveness of the part of the teacher. Fear analysis the opposing theories of cultural action that develop from the oppressor and revolutionary perspective. The oppressor employ various traits in the cultural fears to sustain his dominance. The revolutionary countries these traits with the form of action that promote the liberation of the oppressed. Revolution requires a theory of action that gives the oppressed a fundamental role in the process of achieving liberation. The leader of the revolution must allow the oppressed to take full responsibility in the struggle, and there entail that the people practice necessity involves their critical reflection as well as action. The dominant elites also employ a theory of cultural action to perceive their dominance and prevent the oppressed from challenging it. Fear defines culturally action as a systematic form of action which operates up the social structure with the objective of perceiving and structure of or of transforming it. The oppressor needs to consequent the other underlies all the form of the cultural action. The oppressor action is anti-dialogical, since by the means of it is the dominant elite impose their will upon the weak in the effort to reduce them to silent submission and aspirants of the social order. Pedagogy of the oppressed is fair attempt to help the oppressed fight back to regain their lost humanity and achieve full humanization. Fair outline step with which the oppressed can regain their humanity, straying with the acquiring knowledge about the concept of humanization itself.